If you're interested in the story behind the business headlines, check out Big Technology Podcast, my weekly show that features in-depth interviews with CEOs, researchers, and reformers in business and technology. Hi, I'm Alex Kantrowitz. I'm a longtime journalist, CNBC contributor, and the host of the show. I empty my Rolodex every Wednesday to bring you awesome episodes, so go check out Big Technology Podcast. It's available on all podcast apps. Would love to have you as a listener.
From LinkedIn News, I'm Jessie Hempel, host of the Hello Monday podcast. Start your week with the Hello Monday podcast. We'll navigate career pivots. We'll learn where happiness fits in. Listen to Hello Monday with me, Jessie Hempel, on the LinkedIn Podcast Network or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the American Negotiation Institute's podcast, where we will teach you the skills you need to get more out of life. And now your host, Kwame Christian.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of Negotiation for Entrepreneurs. I'm Kwame Christian. I'm a business lawyer by trade, but my passion lies in teaching you how you can use negotiation and persuasion to get more of what you want and how to make the difficult conversations in your life easier. Before we jump into this episode, I'd like to give a couple of listener shout-outs. I'd like to give a shout-out to Katie from Orange County, California, and Michael, a new listener who let me know that the links to my freebies weren't working. So a special thanks to Michael for bringing this to my attention. And if any of you had this same problem, let me know, and I'll email those freebies to you directly. So you know I love hearing from all of you, so if you haven't yet, please connect with me on LinkedIn. There's a clickable link in the episode description that takes you straight to my LinkedIn page. So just connect and I'll shoot you a message. I really want to know what kind of topics interest you, and LinkedIn is the easiest way for me to connect. And for those of you who are looking for the free negotiation guides from previous episodes, like the negotiation prep guide or the introvert negotiation guide or the car negotiation guide, all of those links are in the description as well. Also, when you get a chance, send me your negotiation wins and I'll share it on the podcast. So today we're speaking to my friend Matt Fox. Matt is a sales expert with over 20 years of experience in sales and in studying persuasion. In this episode, we talk about how you can use sales skills as an entrepreneur and as an in-career professional. We also talk about the barriers that people face when it comes to sales and persuasions. And lastly, we chat about the similarity between sales and negotiation. This interview was really good for me too, because it really helped me to break through some of my own personal barriers when it comes to sales. So I know you're going to get a lot out of it. So without further ado, let's jump into the interview. So Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, glad to be here, Kwame. Finally, I'm on the other end. I interviewed you and now you get to interview me.
I know we're finally coming full circle. So this is going to be cool. So how about you just give a brief introduction of yourself and then what it is you do?
Where to start? Matt Fox. I write at frictionfreesales.com and I have a podcast called Fail to Learn, which is at failtolearn.com. The main thrust of what I do is I teach sales and marketing. And with the name Friction Free Sales, the whole the idea behind it is to make the sales process, or in your case, negotiation process, as friction free as possible. So you're not having to deal with, the objections and the headaches, and you have happy people at the end of the purchase or the end of the negotiation. That's the way I like to look at it. They're not feeling beat up.
That makes sense.
Like the car buying process.
Right. And because I know a lot of people feel like they're looked upon as prey and they need to fend off the salesperson. So this is going to be interesting hearing your approach to sales.
Get home and need to take a bath and get all the ickiness off of you after you go buy a car, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Well, that's perfect. This is a good start. So how would you tell us a little bit about the importance of having sales skills, both for entrepreneurs and for people who are in-career professionals?
Well, it's one of those things that you need it everywhere. Kind of like when we were talking in your interview, the negotiation skills, the sales skills, it's the same things that we do when we're talking to our spouse. It's not, the used car example where somebody's trying to twist and manipulate you and just try to take advantage of you this one time. It's, you're getting inside their head so you can figure out what they want. So that way you can come to a mutually beneficial result, which is hopefully, if you're talking about traditional sales, it's hopefully an exchange of dollars for value. You have to give more value than the dollars they're willing to part with. And whether it's as we were talking beforehand, my wife's an attorney. You're an attorney. I always joke my wife wins all the arguments, but I can sell her any idea. So I just hope it doesn't turn into the argument phase, because she's a litigator. Jokingly, I say that. But it's the same techniques. It's the same strategy. It's listening for the things that aren't being said. Asking the right questions so that you can get them moving in the direction that you want. I
like it.
I don't know if that makes perfectly crystal clear sense, but I think it's critical. I mean, it's one of those skills that it's not taught anywhere. It's just something that most people think they either have it or they don't. Mm-hmm. And it is something that can be learned. It's not hard. It's not hard at all.
I like that. And you say that your goal is to make it as friction-free as possible. Can you tell us about some of the friction that we could experience in the sales process if we're not really familiar with how to do it?
Well, in my book, there's 3 types of psychological resistance that everybody experiences, and we all have it at different times. You've experienced it. I've experienced it. No matter whether you're buying or trying to convince yourself to do something, even you can run into these things. The first one is the resistance to the process, the sales process. So that would be the used car example. That's the one. It's the stereotypical sales example that everybody likes to use as a bad buying experience. But we just recently bought a new car, and the whole time I keep thinking to myself, God, I really don't want to do this, just because the process that's going to be involved, right? The second type of resistance is the resistance to your offer. So that would be the negotiation offer. The initial offer. So there's always going to be some, right. The first rule of negotiation is, always kind of step back when you get the first offer, right?
Right.
And so that's kind of that initial knee-jerk reaction that we will often have. But if it is a sales situation, it could be the price. Is there value based on the price that you're offering? So, and ways to deal with that, things like testimonials. Sometimes and think about for yourself, a product or a course maybe that you purchased, came across it, you kind of had that little, I just don't know. I just don't know if it's for me type thing. And then you start reading these testimonials and you're going, oh, well, if this idiot can do it, maybe I could. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Oh, this guy was a plumber, and I'm not putting down plumbers, but you start going, well, I'm a pretty smart guy. I guess I could probably do this, and maybe it is worthwhile. And so that's one of the ways to deal with the resistance there. And then the third is just inertia. It's just the basic, as I like to call it, everybody's fat, dumb, and lazy. They don't want to get off the couch to even pick up the phone to call to get their the sham wows.
Yeah.
They like it, but they're just sitting there going, man, the damn phone's way over there. I just can't even get off the couch. So there's this inertia that we're all comfortable in a certain spot. And in a political situation, we just had the elections here, and in most cases, the incumbent just won. In all of the House and congressional seats, the incumbent won because people are just lazy. The devil that we know is better than the devil that we don't, right? Mm-hmm. So those are the 3 types that I talk about in the book.
That's fascinating. And when did the book come out?
That's a fine question you asked there. I don't remember when it was. A couple of years ago?
Okay. All right. Very cool. Yeah, this is really interesting to me because, in my opinion, sales is like the first part of the negotiation. That's where we start to generate interest for the product, and then negotiation is the back end when we're talking about the details, what the deal actually looks like. And a lot of times people have the assumption that, oh, Kwame, you're the negotiator, you're great at sales. I'm like, actually, I need some work on sales. So this is a really great topic for me. And a number of listeners reached out to me and said, hey, Kwame, if you could get deeper into sales, that would be great. And I was like, well, I'm not going to get deep into sales, but I have some friends who can. So
I think they go hand in hand.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Personally, I mean, I think they are very, very similar because as we were talking about before, and you said the difference between negotiation and sales, or you think the difference between negotiation and sales is the generating interest part of it. Mm-hmm. And that could be so because I've got to be able to, make you curious to a certain extent. So you kind of want to hear about it. And I think the most people think the salesperson is the slick talker,
right?
And it has nothing to do. You can use the slick talk, okay, but I think it's more along the similar lines of a good negotiation. What's his name? Chris Voss. Mm-hmm. I can't remember the name of his book offhand.
Yeah, Never Split the Difference.
Never Split the Difference, right. And he talks about it in there is that basically he was talking about winning the negotiation when he went back to business school. when people finally, when they said, what are you doing? And he just goes, well, I'm just repeating back what they're saying and asking a few different questions. And in my opinion, that's kind of what sales is. If you're able to ask the right questions. Now, I'm not talking about sales letter and marketing and selling to the masses and trying to convince people to vote for you if you're a politician. That's a different type of sales. But, face-to-face, belly-to-belly type sales or over the phone or via internet or whatever, it's really trying to get into that person's shoes and present from their point of view so that they feel understood. And that way you can just turn around and point to your product and go, well, I know where you're coming from. This thing right here would help you out, and so I think it's very similar.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm really glad that you brought that up because I think that's one of my own personal barriers to my efficacy as a salesperson, because I just have that preconceived notion that it's more like marketing and getting out there and being that slick talker. I'm like, I don't feel like I'm that slick of a talker. Maybe this isn't for me. So you're doing a great job of kind of debunking these common misconceptions about sales, because this makes it seem like it's something that's more accessible to the common person.
Yes and no. I do think it is very accessible to pretty much anyone. And what's funny is I don't really talk about those aspects of it in the book as much. But the hard part, and even in negotiation, the hard part is getting out of our own head and trying to get into the mind of our customer, of getting into the mind of the person that we're negotiating with. And so it is accessible, but it is hard for us as human beings to get out of our brain.
Hey you, I'm Andrew Seaman. Do you want a new job? Or do you want to move forward in your career? Well, you should listen to my weekly show called Get Hired with Andrew Seaman. We talk about it all, and it's waiting for you, yes you, wherever you get your podcasts.
Brace the rudders! Raise the sails! Raise the sails!
Captain, an unidentified ship is approaching. Over.
Roger. Wait, is that an enterprise sales solution?
Reach sales professionals, not professional sailors. With LinkedIn ads, you can target the right people by industry, job title, and more. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Get started today at linkedin.com/marketer. Terms and conditions apply.
And put our preconceived notions aside of what we think that they should have, and being willing to ask questions that might get a no type thing. I can use my spouse for an example, since she will probably never listen to this, thank goodness. We've been married for 15 years now, something like that. And don't tell her I said that, 14 years. Whoops. She starts to bring something up, and instantly in my head, I'm going, oh man, this means she's going to buy this or that. And I don't really want to spend the money on that right now. That's not something that we need. And so it kind of like, instead of stopping and going, well, what do you mean? Instantly in my head, I blurt out, go, no, we don't need to get that right now. You know what I'm saying? Because I've got this opinion in my head of what I think she's going after, as opposed to stopping and asking the questions a little bit deeper to find out if that's where she's really going. And I think that's the biggest problem most of us have when it comes to any type of sales or negotiation type situation.
Interesting. And I'll take a quick moment here and say I was definitely laughing to myself, because I think I said that exact same phrase. My wife's not going to listen to this, so I can give this example. Didn't I say that on your podcast?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
And watch us both get burned.
Your wife is much busier than mine.
Right. But okay, so let's talk about that. Let's use that as an example. So in your wife's situation, in that example, when she says she wants to buy that thing and you say, I don't feel like we need that, from a sales perspective, how would you counsel her through that conversation?
Whoa, that's a tough one for me to get out of my own situation. It's just getting comfortable with asking questions that may go a way you don't want them to go. I do a lot of training here locally for a company, and one of the things that I always teach them is they need to ask questions. You got open-ended questions, right? Open-ended versus closed-ended. So everybody thinks you got to ask these open-ended questions. You can't ask closed-ended questions because you might get a yes or a no, right? Mm-hmm. Well, that's okay, because if they tell you no, then you've got a direction that they're ready to move in. So there's nothing wrong with that. I want to know. And so, let's do the car example. If I'm looking for a car and the person asks, would you like the blue car over here or the red one over here? And you kind of look at it, you're pondering for a second. Well, I think I like the blue one better than the red one. And it's just a matter of asking, are you sure? Are you sure you really like the red one? Or actually, here's a better example. And this is the one that I use a little bit more with the company that I deal with here. But first thing asking is, why'd you come in? Why are we talking today? Right. And in the car example is, why'd you choose our dealership? Okay. Why ours over, there's hundreds of them here on this, if your street's like ours here, all the dealerships are in the same little 1 mile geographic area, right? So how come ours as opposed to, the one next door? And get them to make a commitment as to why they're there. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
I'm getting them to say why they're at our place, or why they're choosing this location, or why they're considering this option, this offer. Why are they so stuck on this as opposed to choosing this benefit over here? And we want them to kind of make a commitment and plant their feet firmly saying, well, no, I really want this one. That's why I'm here. Or that's why I'm choosing this.
That makes sense. And it reminds me of a questioning technique called the funnel technique. I'm not sure if that's an official name or just the name I made up for it because it makes sense to me. But with your opening questions, you're starting kind of broad. And so in your example, it was, why are you here? That could go anywhere. And so then as you start to understand the person's situation and their motivations, you start to narrow your questions, taking them down that funnel. And your questions can get more and more specific as you start to get to the heart of the matter. So I think that's a really great example there on how you can start broad with these questions and eventually get down to the specifics in order to figure out exactly what moves them and what their key interests are.
Exactly. I wrote a post on, I had the worst sales experience. And we've all been through or had to sit through something like this. Is a couple of years ago, we were redoing all the landscaping in our yard. And I'm like, well, since we're going to be redoing everything in this house, I want to get new windows. The house is from the late 80s, early 90s or something like that. And so I figured we'll redo the windows and get these nice double pane, triple pane, help save for electricity bill, because we live in Arizona and it gets really hot here. If you guys have ever heard of hell, it gets hotter here. Okay. So the windows help keep the air conditioning bill down a little bit in the summer months, which is basically from like March to last week. And so I called up this company that the neighbors had the little sign in the yard, said they got new windows. So I called the people up, said, come on out. The guy comes up, opens up the door, and he goes, are you Matt? And I say, are you? I go, yes. Are you Bob? And that was like the extent of his questions.
Oh my.
Are you Matt? I come walking in. I go, yeah. I go, here, let's sit down at the kitchen table. And he flips out his little iPad, puts it down, and got a little flip presentation here. And if anybody's been in old school sales types, they give you like a little flip chart presentation and you say things as you go through the little presentation. And hopefully at the end, the customer buys, and then you deal with objections if they don't. And he didn't even ask, why are you thinking about getting new windows? Like that would be the first question out of my mind, sitting down at the kitchen table, look out the window, go, wow, why are you thinking about getting new windows? These seem to keep out the bugs and I can see through them. He didn't even ask.
Oh man.
And he just starts going on about the company, and like 5 minutes into it, not even that long, but I just go, I don't care. Just tell me about the windows. I just want to know about the windows. And that was, he asked me about 3 questions throughout the entire thing, and that was it.
Oh my God.
The other one was, do you want to see the windows? I'm like, sure, go get one. Bring it in here. Anyhow.
See, that's funny, because if any of the listeners out there are like me, they're having some flashbacks here, because I've been caught in a couple of those. I remember one was a network marketing type of deal, and I was trapped at this coffee shop looking at this guy's iPad. And then the other one, we were traveling to the Bahamas, and this guy came up to us. He's like, hey, do you want to go to a free rum party? I was like, how could that be a bad thing? Let's go. Let's do this. And so my wife and I, we went to this quote, free rum party, and then they give us this watered down alcohol, and then there was a lot of it because they wanted to lower our defenses, and we had to sit through this hour plus long timeshare presentation. Like, oh my gosh, the sun is setting on my time here in the Bahamas, and I'm here at this farce of a rum party listening to this timeshare presentation. So yeah.
And you're like, and I'm in another country and I don't know the laws. Are the doors locked? Am I going to get out alive if I don't buy?
Exactly. And that's terrible. So how can we as people who are trying to influence others, how can we avoid being that stereotypical salesperson, the one who kind of just traps people and you're just kind of stuck there, the captive audience? How can we make sure that we don't get that bad rap as a salesperson?
It really is about asking questions. It's all about asking the questions. And it comes down to being able to listen to the things that aren't being said. If, we've all seen the police drama where the person is in the interrogation room and the person's asking them, so how did you drive home on Tuesday night, or how did you go home on Tuesday night, the night of what happened? And he says, well, I usually take Main Street and then I take a right on First Street and then take a third on Central Way. And then my house is over there on the left. Okay. And the key word there was usually. I usually travel this way. Well, that isn't the way he said that he went on Tuesday night. That's the way he usually goes. And so it's listening for these little things that aren't being said. As an attorney, in deposition, you've got to listen for things that aren't being said and figure how to question those. And people aren't intentionally lying like they might be in an interrogation room to cover their butt. But they say things that the way that we express the things that are going on in our head is the words that we use. And so being able to listen to little things. I hate to use this example, but it's a great example. Trump's campaign slogan, Make America Great Again. If it was just Make America Great, it would have zero power. Okay. But it's that word again. And nobody questioned it. What does he mean by again? Is he talking about 100 years ago where women couldn't vote and racism was everywhere? Or are we talking about, before Obama was in office when Bush was in office? What does he mean by again? How do you define that? And so it's asking little questions on things like that. So when somebody says something like that, well, I just want to make America great again. Well, what do you mean? How so? How's it not great? And just being more curious and trying to dive in instead of looking for our turn to talk.
Right.
Really, really listening.
That makes sense. I like that. And it really goes to show that you always have to focus on the person that you're talking to. Like, what are their key interests? What are their needs? And what are their wants? And the only way that you can find that is by taking the time to listen to what they're saying genuinely. And not listen only for the opportunity to make a quick response. You have our auto responses in their back pocket, like, oh, I can't wait for him to say X, Y, Z because I have that response. It's like genuinely waiting to hear what they have to say and adjusting based on that. So yeah, I think that's a really great point. And it's so funny. This is just like negotiation. Oh yeah,
that's why I say I think they're hand in glove. They just fit together so perfectly. And I gotta say, for me to be sitting here and answering these questions without asking a question back is weird. It's like something I have to force myself to do. It's so many times that I sit with people and because I'm so used to just asking questions and it's just a thing where you got to be genuinely curious about the people that you're talking to and not be afraid to ask questions. That's what it really comes down to, is not censoring yourself. Think of yourself like a little kid. Little kids aren't afraid to ask, where do babies come from, and make adults uncomfortable. Have you ever heard of? My son has the Dangerous Book for Boys. He got that last year, and there's a game in there called the yes no game or the question game or something like that.
Not familiar.
And the game is basically you ask questions and the person has to answer quickly. They're not allowed to pause, and they can't answer the same way twice, and they can't answer with a yes or a no.
Wow.
Okay. And so if somebody asks you a question, you can't not answer it unconsciously.
Right.
See, I just asked you a question, didn't I? So training ourselves to be able to ask questions, sit there quietly and wait for the response is something that I think a lot of people, they don't have the the force of will, the fortitude, what's inside. They get nervous, and so they start to fill in the questions, or they start to answer for them. And so, that's a great game to start with people to just see how many times you can ask questions. The yes/no game is great for kids because there's little separation between their conscious and unconscious. So when you ask them a question, like my younger daughter, you start twisting, going, I don't think that would be a good idea, as opposed to saying no. She's like twisting because she wants to just say no, but she's trying to figure out a way to not say no.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I like that.
So just asking the questions is the biggest thing there, I think.
It reminds me of an exercise I put people through when, let me not say put people through. That sounds negative. An exercise that I have people do when they're in my negotiation seminars. And the exercise is you have to ask one question and the person responds for a minute, 60 seconds. You can't say anything. And then when the other person's talking, and then at the end of the 60 seconds, you need to parrot back what the person says. And so it forces you to listen intently without interruption. And then at the end, you prove your listening by summarizing, and the person has to let you know that you did okay. And it's so hard for people to do that. It's for the listener, it feels like an eternity. 60 seconds? It's tough for many people, but it's one of the best skills you can develop if you want to be great at negotiating and better at sales. I
think that's an improv skill.
Yeah.
Or something that comes out of improv training, if I remember correctly. Another one that you might want to incorporate also is, and this is one that I like to do with people, is I'll have them ask like the closing question, is there anything else you need to know before we get you started today? And then neither one of them are allowed to speak. They just have to sit there and be with each other and time that and try to have them sit there for a minute before anybody's allowed to say yes or no. And you can see, the typical salesperson just wants to go, I can give you a discount if you do it now. They because there's that uncomfortable silence. They want to fill it. Somebody wants to fill it.
Right. And it's interesting because it's like it's so painful psychologically a lot of times for somebody to sit there in silence. But there's a lot of action happening in silent moments in the negotiation or a conversation or a sales pitch, because in our minds, we fill that gap with a list of horribles. It's like I ask the question, they're silent. It's probably because they hate me. They hate the price. They think the product's stupid. What can I do? And but really, in their mind, we don't know what's going on. No. What might be happening is they might say, should I start today or should I start tomorrow? This is a really fair price. What should I do? And then as they're thinking, like you said, somebody could jump in and say, well, but if you can't do that price, we can do a discount. Right. Like, well, where did that come from? And a lot of times we let people.
Maybe if I sit here quiet a little bit longer, I might get more.
Right. That's the classic example of negotiating against yourself, where you do their job for you, or you just you prevent yourself from getting all the information you can, and you end up shooting yourself in the foot because the goal is to learn through these conversations. And whenever you're talking, it's unlikely that you're learning.
All you're doing is repeating what you know.
Exactly.
Every time you talk.
Exactly. So I think we probably covered a couple of these, but in your experience, what are some common mistakes you've seen people make in their sales process?
That's basically it, is not asking the right questions, or not asking deep enough questions, not really listening, not paying attention. And the other one is that when they do start it, like if they start off the conversation and they start off asking questions, not sitting there quietly and waiting for the person to respond. And that's something that I see that a lot, where people, they ask the question and it's, like you were just saying, the customer is sitting there kind of quietly, and then they'll throw out an answer, or they try to help the customer answer it and give them a couple options to answer it, as opposed to waiting for them to answer it. And every time, so when you ask a question, you need to be blunt, you need to shut up. Right. Okay. And just wait, just sit there, be with the person and wait. And because what you're doing is you're training them that you'll sit there, you're comfortable, you can sit there as long as you need to until they're going to answer the question. I think training my dog. We got a puppy last year and been working with them. These principles apply to humans as they apply to dogs. If you just, give the command and wait. And once he does the command, then reward him. But I can sit here all day. And if he wants to walk off, then he doesn't get the reward. But it's the same thing with asking a question. Like I said, we got to sit there quietly and wait for the answer. And then, you ask another question, and that gap in time will start to decrease over time as they start to realize it's uncomfortable. And so until they answer, that's their reward. Okay. But the critical part is when it comes to the end of the sales process or the negotiation, and we got down and we have the deal all ironed out, and is this good enough? Are we ready to go ahead with this? And if you have been filling in the answers every time, when it comes to the really critical question, they're not going to feel the pressure, as opposed to if you were silent every question, they're going to feel that pressure right there where they're going to have to go yes or no.
I like that.
So it's the Pavlov dog thing. Right. You got to train them to answer your questions.
Right. I love it. This is perfect. I'm here taking notes. This is good. So we're coming up on time, but before you go, what is one tip that you would give to our listeners to help them to be more persuasive or influential? And I know we covered questions a lot, but what's something else that they could do?
I like the yes-no game.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing that they could do is go out and try to make other people's lives happier. Do what you can to make other people happy. If you want to practice influence skills, that's the one thing you could probably do the most is just go out and you're checking out at the grocery line as you start talking. My wife always laughs because every time I go up to the grocery line, it's like, hey, how much fun are you having today? And what's the presupposition in there is that I'm asking them how much fun they're having. Not are they having fun, but how much. And so they kind of have to think about it for a second, which is a little bit weird. And they kind of go, I'm at work, so it's not that bad. Well, good thing I'm here. Fortunately, we can have a better day now, or something like that. Just do little things to brighten people's day, and you'll be surprised at the questions that you can ask and the things that you can do to if you can influence somebody to make them just a little bit happier, you can influence people to buy your stuff.
I love it. And you know what? Because I know you before doing this interview, the thing that I love about this is that what I'm seeing is that in your style, you are 100% you. You don't try to conform to what people should do or shouldn't do or anything like that, or try to be the corporate Matt Fox. You are the Matt Fox in everything. So I appreciate that. And I hope everybody realizes that authenticity and the power it could have when it comes to being persuasive.
But if you ever meet me, this is probably the most talkative unless you get me started on that stuff. But usually I'll come back and start asking you what you're doing. Because I'm always trying to figure out what other people are doing. I usually ask a lot more questions. Ask my wife. She's just surprised how quiet I can sit all the time and talk when people are talking.
That's funny.
I'm usually this quiet, shy-looking guy.
But that's your skill. I mean, because you ask great questions and you're a good listener.
Thank you.
My pleasure. So thank you so much for coming on the show. This was really great. I know this was going to be good for the audience, and I know it was great for me personally. So thank you again for coming. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you're finding this information helpful, please leave a review and subscribe. My goal is to teach these skills to as many people as possible, and leaving a review helps our search results, which helps us to reach more people. Success and failure is determined by how well we handle the critical conversations in our lives. My job is to help you to make these difficult conversations easier while getting you more of what you want in the process. I've had the opportunity to work with a wide variety of professionals, including lawyers, entrepreneurs, warring business partners, and professionals trying to climb the corporate ladder. I do this through a simple 3-step process: analyze, strategize, and practice. So first we analyze the situation to get a lay of the land and understand what we're dealing with. Then we use the information from our analysis to create a customized strategy for your situation. And then we practice, which will give you the confidence you need to stand firm when the heat is on in these difficult conversations. If you don't prepare properly, you run the risk of missing out on these critical opportunities. Remember, negotiation is the art of deal discovery, not deal making. I will help you to find the best deal possible, and I'll teach you how and when to walk away from a deal that's bad for you. Sometimes the worst outcome in a negotiation is a deal that should never have been made. By the end of this process, you're going to feel confident in your ability to perform, and you will have put yourself in the best position to succeed. If you'd like to work with me, all you need to do is shoot me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn and we can get started. But in the meantime, please check out all of the free resources we have at the website, AmericanNegotiationInstitute.com. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a great week, and I'll catch you in the next one.